It's 7:12. Southwest Airlines is one of several major airlines recalling its economic forecasts for the year. We're here with Andrew Watterson, Southwest Chief Operating Officer, and we'll get to bookings in a second. But first of all, we made such a big deal about those end of the era stories when you stopped letting two bags fly free. But it was never as simple as that. And I noticed this morning that there's a really important exception to that rule that affects Hawaii travelers.
That is correct. So on May 28th, we'll go from a kind of really flexible type offering to customers to a more choice-based where you can kind of, buy more or buy less depending on what you want, and that includes bags. However, for Hawaii residents travel inter-island, there'll still be 2 bags fly free. And so you just have to have that, your address in your Rapid Rewards account, and you get 2 free bags flying inter-island.
And so that's pretty important when you're flying from one island to another, as so many of us do sometimes several times a year. So the one thing to keep in mind, but we started by talking about the recall of forecasts, and not just by Southwest. United put out 2 different versions of its forecast. Delta and American recalled their forecasts. How are your bookings looking for summer now?
Yeah, so I think every airline that has reported earnings so far has recalled their full year forecast, and that's because economic weakness, macro weakness started in the first quarter and progressed throughout. It was consumer based. What's odd is normally when you see an economic slowdown, it affects business travel first. Business travel, ex-government travel, has held up quite nicely. It's consumer discretionary that's pulled back, and so we see kind of strong closer in bookings, but further out bookings are weak. It's like customers are uncertain and waiting. Reminds me a little bit of COVID when people would book closer in rather than further out because they were uncertain.
And of course, business travel is reasonably frequently done at the last minute, so they can afford to wait and see how things play out.
That is true, and so businesses are buying close in, and even consumers are buying close in. I wouldn't say like day before, but say 14, 20 days in advance rather than 60, 80 days in advance. That's the kind of shift that's happened throughout the first quarter.
If things don't get worse, that is, if there are no further prolonged failures of trade negotiations and so forth, can Southwest remain profitable at current levels of bookings?
Yes, our profitability that we forecast for the second quarter shows that we'll be profitable at the current level of demand. And so, we are generally a financially strong airline. We're the 3rd most profitable this quarter. Usually we're the 1st, so all our efforts are getting back to being number 1 in that regard. But we're a financially sound company, and so managing conservatively is helpful in downturns.
There's an interesting story in today's Wall Street Journal. You may have actually seen it already, where they called a bunch of companies and said, what are you doing to prepare for possible tariff continuation? And they all said, well, we're cutting various things that we can cut. We're focusing on the things we can do so that we're ready for what we can't change, which the Wall Street Journal called a business executive's version of the Serenity Prayer.
Well, that's interesting, but we definitely do see businesses starting to understand what their supply chain looks like. For us, most of our costs are labor costs and jet fuel. We buy our aircraft from Boeing, obviously, and our engines from General Electric. So we are paying attention to our supply chain, but a lot of our costs are kind of U.S. domestic by nature.
And jet fuel at the moment is not anywhere near as bad as it has been at some other times.
Yes, it is often the case when the economy slows down, jet fuel drops as well, and that's the case right now.
Okay. So basically, if this affects you, take your trip now, and then later, if things get better, you can take another trip. It's 7:16, and we'll have more sunrise for you in a moment.